Hello guys, today we will be talking about what if Naruto was betrayed by his family part 1. If you enjoy this video please like and subscribe. Now let's begin. The Valley of the End. He was tired. He had used up all his chakra getting past the Sound 4 and keeping up with the abilities of the Sharingan, and now we find Naruto exhausted and being held up by Sasuke, the latter ready to plunge an electricity-covered arm through his heart. A last-ditch effort, the blonde diverted the elemental blade from his heart to his right lung. It would still be a death blow to any normal being, but our blonde hero was anything but normal. The pain was all he could feel, not the crimson liquid being poured from his punctured lung or the blood rapidly filling his mouth, but this pain brought back memories of his Rasengan training with Jiraiya. Memory. Naruto sat concentrating on the small blue orb slowly growing in his charred palm. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. His chakra sufficiently drained from him with performing the technique so many times he had no more to give, so with a sigh he grabbed a fallen leaf and spun it between his dexterous digits, slumped against a tree and closed his eyes. Going over the steps in his head, he was so focused on getting more chakra to continue to train, oblivious to the now shriveled and bone-dry leaf, he absorbed chakra from the small leaf he was twirling between his fingers. With the small amount of nature's chakra he had absorbed, he felt the minute increase in his reserves. Like a raindrop upon a puddle, he felt the ripple and opened his eyes to see the dead leaf. Many people had called him obtuse, or oblivious to his surroundings or the world, but his mind had been kept sharp from a young age to avoid any and all unwanted encounters with the civilians and most ninja of Konoha. But those were far from his thoughts, and he looked at the once bright green leaf turn dead brown. He gave the leaf a once-over and dropped it to pick up another leaf laying near him, so he began experimenting with the newfound idea. It was the direct opposite of the Rasengan. Instead of forcing out chakra in a swirling pattern, he drew his chakra away from his palm in a circular pattern, and he gained the same results from the last leaf. It crumpled between his fingers. Once again he felt the drop of chakra from the leaf in his exhausted reserves. A grin spread across his face. Training would go so much faster as he didn't have to stop to wait for his chakra to replenish. All around, you could see large brown circles all over the once green clearing. He once tried draining chakra from a tree, but he immediately felt it overwhelming him and forced him to vomit up the foreign essence from his body, with much coughing following after forcibly ejecting the chakra from his body. As the bet against Tsunade waged on, he practiced with his absorption powers after each session to perfect the Rasengan. He found that not only could he take chakra from the plant life around him but animals and other people as well. He experimented with it whenever he was near large crowds and he could touch a person's hand or sleeved arm unnoticed. He found not only would he steal chakra, but he found he would have memories and abilities that weren't his. Each new person or animal he siphoned off of, he would feel their emotions and gain traits. When he first noticed the changes in his physical form, he couldn't control them. And the more powerful the being he siphoned, the more difficult it was to force the traits absorbed to recede. Memory in Naruto had never tested his power on another shinobi, but this time was as good as any, so with shaken intake of air he grabbed a firm hold of Sasuke's arm, implanted in his chest, and began to drain all the chakra he could. "Sasuke, you are the first to see my new ability in action," were Naruto's words to his newest enemy. "What are you talking about, dead last?" What tech was all he said before he could feel all his chakra begin leave him. He tore his arm from the blonde's grip and fell to one knee. The fist-sized hole in Naruto's chest closed up with the intake of fresh chakra to work with. His once blonde hair now had thick black streaks and had grown out to similar length to Sasuke's. Blue eyes turned purple with the famous 3-to-moe design of the Sharingan. Even the curse seal had been absorbed. Memories of techniques. The Uchiha massacre. From Sasuke's perspective, everything that was Sasuke was now firmly copied into Naruto's mind and body. The rush of chakra re-entered the blonde, black-haired teen. He grinned and kicked Sasuke into the cliff and rendered him into the blissful darkness. "Sasuke, you are coming back to Konoha to face judgment of desertion and treason." So Naruto tied Sasuke's limbs together and prepared to make the long trek back to his village. By the time Naruto had arrived at the village, he had successfully suppressed Sasuke's personality and physical traits, so he was back to his blonde self and currently very proud of himself for completing his second A-rank mission. But as soon as he had stepped through the gates, Sasuke was plucked from his grasp and Tsunade herself gave the blonde boy a solid chop to the back of the neck. The only words Naruto could GT out before he succumbed to the blackness was "Why?" Naruto woke up to fuzzy voices like a radio with terrible reception, and supremely light-sensitive eyes. Soon enough everything came into focus and he was simply sitting in a chair in the center of the Konoha Council Hall and much yelling was going on around him. Straight-out execution is far too merciful to this stupid little shit, he almost ended the Uchiha line. The little fucker needs to die a slow agonizing death. Why waste time trying to torture the bastard when he can spend all of eternity burning the pits of the deepest hell? No need to delay him to his long overdue death. Those were an excerpt sample to the two sides of the ideas going on, and neither boded well for the blonde hero. Everyone quieted down when the doors swung open to reveal a stone-faced Tsunade and Jiraiya. They both took their respective seats and everyone faced Naruto seated in the middle. Tsunade stood and read off the only thing on the agenda for the meeting: the execution of Namikaze Uzumaki. Naruto will now be decided. Naruto's eyes bugged out of his head at hearing both his name combined with the Yondaim's and that he was facing execution. What had he done? So he voiced his concerns. "Bachan, what the hell is going on? I haven't done anything." In record time Tsunade's face went from emotionless to cold fury etched across her face and she hissed out, "You will hold your tongue, address me in such a manner again and I will shatter your jaw." Naruto winced at the anger in her voice. But what is this all about? He still couldn't figure out what was going on. "Fine, Hokage-sama, what is this all about?" The blonde can control himself when he needs to and a threat of a shattered jaw is a good reason for some self-control. Most of the anger had left the features of the Yondaim and returned back to emotionless. "You have been deemed expendable and you are to be trialed and executed for the crimes of your Baijiu." Our blonde hero's jaw dropped to the ground. "But Bachan, I'm not the Kyuubi. Ask my friends, I haven't done anything wrong." The council erupted into laughter when Tsunade spoke up between the throes of laughter. "I haven't laughed that hard in years, so I will forgive your insult, but I would never be the grandmother to a demon such as yourself, and you have no friends, Ite." Secure your undying loyalty, Konoha, but your useful has to an end. Execution will see late with the return. The lay Meiji retakes mantle of Hokage. Actually I will him explain. With those words a bright yellow flash revealed Minato the Yondaim standing next to his wife Kushina and children. Ki, who looked identical to Naruto except for the Kyuubi Jinchuriki markers on his cheeks, and a slightly younger girl named Ri. She had shoulder-length hair, red like her mother, and a soft-featured face. Many whispers and hushed gasps floated amongst the room as people stared upon a supposedly long-dead figure and his family. "Greetings, honorable council. It is true, I am Minato Namikaze the Yondaim Hokage. I had faked my death along with my wife and son to move into exile as to not trigger the legendary rage of Kyuubi. With the Kyuubi modified for a few years, it enabled the Jinchuriki seal to link my former son and Baijiu, and only when they were finally fully combined could I return to finally slay the Baijiu once and for all. With all the pieces finally coming into place, his name being read as Namikaze and the Yondaim himself saying he was his former son, Naruto surged from his seat with a scream intent on causing some sort of bodily harm to repay his father for leaving him stuck with Kyuubi. But he didn't get more than 2 steps before green light shot from the Shodame's necklace and bound his arms, legs and head from moving. Minato chuckled and seeing Naruto lying on the floor struggling against the chakra bonds. "I am glad that necklace even after all this time still keeps steam and chakra contained. Your execution will be long and arduous. I will personally see to it. I have waited 15 years in exile waiting for the time where I can return to my people, and tomorrow I shall enjoy finally ridding the world of Kyuubi once and for all." And with that he walked up to Naruto as he had maneuvered into a kneeling position. Minato knelt to be eye level with Naruto and said, "Enjoy your last hours on earth, Kyuubi, and if my son is able to hear me, I would like to humbly thank you and apologize for what I will do. But what the hell, my first son died when I started the fusion with the demon. Minato stood straight and grabbed the back of Naruto's head and brought the younger blonde's face to his quickly moving knee, and a resounding crack from the sudden breaking of a nose and then the grinding noise as he ground his knee into the shattered bone and cartilage. Blood quickly escaped from the broken skin and poured down Naruto's face. He didn't make a sound through the entire ordeal, resolved to not let them see the pain he felt on the inside. The powerful blow had caused his brain to bruise and swell, forcing him into unconsciousness. The next day in Konoha the streets were flooded with people. An announcement called for attendance of the village inhabitants in the open marketplace. Everyone was waiting for what the Hokage had gathered them for. Soon enough a Nanbu walked into the square, and with a quick cry of "Makyo," a large stage and gallows was erected and the Hokage marched to the stage. Gazing over the crowd, Tsunade picked up each face and smiled once she saw the entire populace showed up, bar the ninja on missions and villagers out on business. She addressed the gathered people of Konoha. "Today I stand before you as your Hokage, but without you all there would be no Konoha. Together we are unstoppable. 15 years ago Kyuubi attacked our home and we would not yield. We brought the demon to its knees. Today we see the final step in the death of Kyuubi and raise ourselves above all others, superior to all." During her speech there were chants of praise and loyalty. Konoha. The crowd screamed, getting worked into a frenzy. "Each ninja that fell to the beast will never die. They are not dead, they live in us. They live in Konoha." Roars of cheers so deafening thinking was made all but impossible with the intrusion of the cheering. "Bring out the demon," Tsunade demanded. Naruto was bound, hands behind his back and the Yondaim's necklace secured tightly to his neck to prevent any resistance. He was pelted with food, trash, rocks, anything that the crowd could get a hold of. He made it to the stage and was knelt on the edge before the crowd. Naruto watched the crowd as everybody he knew screamed chants of Konoha and murderer were some of the loudest. Tsunade stepped next to Naruto, brought the crowd to a dull roar as she continued her speech. "People of Konoha, here is the Kyuubi fused with from us. Today we finally send it into the depths of the abyss to suffer in an eternity of pain. Human into death. Today we shall carve out revenge for each man and woman torn." The Anbu lead Naruto over to the rope hanging from the gallows and secured it around his neck fairly tight. With a signal the rope was pulled from the other end and Naruto was yanked into the air and lowered back a standing position and was jerked back into the air and held for half a minute. Seconds from passing out they lowered him and undid the noose. Naruto was then dragged to a table near the edge for the crowd to get a good view. His hands were freed and readied above his head. The lack of oxygen and disorientation proved to weaken him, so he put up little effort. Next a kunai was heated, blazing red and agonizingly slowly cut through the skin of his abdomen, cauterizing each blood-carrying vessel to prevent bleeding out. During this process the amassed crowd was deathly silent, wanting to hear the pleas from the demon for it to beg for life, only to be denied. Alas, they would wait in eternity. Not a sound escaped the lips of Naruto except the sparse groan when the kunai hit a nerve cluster. After the cutting of his abdomen was complete, the executioners slowly removed each organ and loose flesh from the open body cavity. The same red-hot kunai was used to prolong his pain and stave off the loss of blood as each organ was cut out. Finally, once his stomach area was emptied, they sprinkled a mixture of salt and sulfur to draw out the screams they craved for. Again not a sound, only blood passed his drenched red lips. Infuriated, Tsunade stepped forth to introduce the final player in the sick display of savagery. "I bring forth the long-thought dead, the defeater of Kyuubi himself, the Yondaim." And a bright yellow flash erupted next to her, and none other than the Yondaim stood with his arms to the sky, and the crowd immediately grew to cheers and praise to the once thought-fallen Hokage. Minato stepped next to the bloody table and the masses quieted as he spoke. "The Kyuubi so long ago stomped upon our noble people and watched the life leave their eyes, and now I shall watch the life leave its eyes." With that the Anbu picked up the almost comatose Naruto and knelt him at the feet of the Namikaze. Minato brought one of his famous tri-pronged kunai from his hip pouch and set it to the throat of Naruto. A quick slash and a torrent of rich crimson liquid sprayed out of the wound. Naruto quickly toppled onto his back, gasping for air that couldn't pass the blood. With his last few moments of life, our bloody blonde watched the gleaming Minato's eyes grow as said man stomped on his chest, forcing even more of the life liquid to spray onto the stage. Soon the streams of blood slowed and lessened in strength before nothing came from the slice except drops, and with the stopping of the flow of blood so did the life of one Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, vessel and tide spirit of the Kyuubi no Yoko. It was a day of celebration in Konoha. The Kyuubi is dead, Yondaim is back and better than ever, life was good for the people. The corpse of Naruto was carried from the stage and burned unceremoniously, his name stricken from the records of every book and file in Konoha. No one would remember the name Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, or who he was. To the village he no longer existed. But that was far from the truth. Somewhere in between the realm of living and dead our blonde hero opens his eyes to a never-ending wideness. Time, mass, space was meaningless. The only color seen besides himself is the red-curled form of the once great Kyuubi no Kitsune. The demon used to stand a magnificent 300 feet is now barely larger than a basketball. The blood-colored fur ruffled as the demon stretched and groaned from its slumber. With a voice that was once deep and deafening was now a soft quiet mew. It seems we are now tied together forever. Human Naruto's eyes bugged from his skull at hearing and seeing the once terror-inspiring demon now reduced to a small cute animal you would rather pick up and cuddle than harm. With an outstretched arm and accusing finger pointing he shouted, "Holy shit, what the fuck happened? Look around, human, we are dead." Well, technically we are being taken to Makyo. Naruto, having the intelligence of the many people he had practiced his absorption on, he quickly pieced together a question that reflected his confusion. With a sigh the once nine-tailed demon reformed into a teenage girl of average height and athletic build wrapped in a knee-length deep blue kimono. Bright curly red hair swayed just below her shoulder blades and smoldering red eyes were tucked away just behind long black lashes. Human, I am to be reborn back into the realm of demons, and by extension you are as well. Why am I being reborn into a demon's realm? I'm just human. Shouldn't I be going to like heaven or hell? No, by your father's deeds we are tethered together in everything but body. Our power is shared, together through life and rebirth, never apart for eternity. That is the deal your daddy dearest evoked with the gods to defeat me in hopes that I would follow you into your afterlife. Fortunately he was wrong. Once a demon always a demon. Instead you shall follow me again. Not getting the situation, Naruto, so I'm a demon now. Doesn't seem so bad. So we get to go back into the world, and I get a chance to return to Konoha and repay my father. A sweet deal to me, Kyuubi. You are not a demon yet, still only a human, and do not call me Kyuubi. I have lost that name once my power was distributed in death. I am just Kiyomi. Kiyomi, now my title of power is no more. I am the bottom of demons now. And we do not return to the human realm, we go to Makyo, and only the strong can open the portals between them. The system of demons was about as clear as mud to Naruto. You're gonna have to explain demons from the beginning, Kiyomi-chan. Ignorant human, since your survival ensures mine as well, I shall indulge you. She knelt to the ground and sat on her heels and motioned for Naruto to do the same. With both comfortably seated she began her explanation. We demons were first born of a mighty deity. It was infinite in power, knowledge and cruelty. This god only sought to destroy what other gods had created and nurtured. Many realms and worlds fell to the corrupt powers. Eventually all gods had gathered and shattered the powers and mind of the deity into infinite fragments and sealed it away in the realm now named Makyo. Over time the fragments grew from the pieces of the old god's mind and power to become the sentient. They became demons, and all demons are drawn to fight and consume the blood of their brethren to become the deity once more. Many have overcome the urges to consume solely for the purpose of reforming the god, but the only way to gain more power is to drink of demon blood. I was one such demon who had failed to suppress the urge to reform. When I was at my strongest I had consumed the blood of thousands if not millions, and I sought out another who had such power as I did. That is what led me to your realm in search of the missing Jobai. I was naught but a wild beast in search of food. That is where your world intersects with demons. Kiyomi stopped to clear her throat before she continued on, also giving Naruto a chance to ask any questions he had so far. Naruto's eyes were unfocused and he mulled over what Kiyomi had said, and many questions stood out. You said I am not a demon yet. How would I become a demon? And how would there still be demons if everyone kept killing each other? How are you still alive? Do you still have the urges to consume the demon blood? The demoness twirled her hair and thought and spoke in the order you asked. I will answer. To become a demon I must steal the fragment of power within another demon for yourself, which means I will drink the blood of another to give you a demon's body. We demons are just like humans. Once we have overcome the influence of the old god, we have emotions. Many find others who attract them and they reproduce more demons from their combined fragments. It is impossible for the shattered god to reform as the other deities keep a close eye to the concentrations of fragments, and once a single demon reaches a billionth of the deity's full power they shatter that demon as well and more demons are created from those fragments. How I am still alive is once your soul was released from your body, instead of your realm's ruling deity we were handled by the strongest demon of Makyo, and to please those watching, I had two choices. The ruling demon would take my collected fragments and scatter them amongst all demons and we would simply cease to exist, or make a selfless choice of keeping your spirit alive along with mine. It also plays into your final question. Since we are now sharing my single shard, your knowledge and personality was able to suppress the urge and grant me lucidity. If not for you we would cease to exist until the demon who gained our shard had reached the point where the watching deities shatter it and we reform. It could take infinite time before we would have been free. Even then we wouldn't know to be reborn, we would never exist again, simply nothing. I would have chosen my former state to try and hang on to every shard and fail. So for that I thank you. Kiyomi finished her answering with her head touching the white equivalent of the floor. The blonde's mind was officially blown. Drinking blood, demons having offspring, Kiyomi, whose power was already unfathomable, was not even a billionth of the deity's full power, himself being the reason for bringing her from insanity. It was all like some sick cosmic joke. Oh well, not much else could surprise Naruto now. That is a lot to take in, Kiyomi-chan, but I think I understand. Please continue. With a quick nod Kiyomi began. Where was I again? Ah yes, where our worlds connect. You see, Jubai was like me, wild, untamed and most of all, powerful. From what I gathered in my searches through your world, there was a time when Jubai ran loose and released mighty attacks, and through its battles with humans it seems some fragments of the old god had bled from him and infused with humans, providing which a race called chakra and bloodlines. When one human was born with a particularly powerful combination of shards, he used his knowledge and power to force the Jubai into a hibernation through what your kind call genjutsu. Demons cannot use any chakra-based jutsu, except for changing the energy into a raw element, but the control for the element is not possible. Demons are weak to genjutsu since we cannot channel our energies as you humans can. With the Jubai asleep, he forced the slumbering demon into the sky. For centuries since then the body has stayed and been covered in dust and rock orbiting your world. It is now what you call the moon. As the centuries raged on and your race grew and expanded, the shards from Jubai have been split and diluted. Each person that dies and is buried is then reduced to dirt which the plants grow from, and they themselves use the leftover power to create your nature chakra as they have named it. Eventually your human chakra will dry up and bloodlines will cease to exist, since there is not enough of the god's power to provide them with those abilities. That is the history of demons and the beginning of chakra. Kiyomi finished her tale and stood to look upwards into the whiteness. It seems the tale ended just in time. We will be in Makyo soon. When we exit we must find a demon to steal a shard from so that you may have your own body. Until then you shall reside inside of me like I had in you before. Naruto felt a tingling sensation in his hands only to look and see that his body was beginning to dematerialize and flow into the body of Kiyomi. He looked to his now eternal partner. I guess I'll see you when you find a shard. For the time we spoke I am glad I met you. And with that he was completely fused inside of the demoness, and he missed the slight blush on her face from his touching words. No one has spoken such kind words to me. I am glad I met you as well. Namake's Naruto. In the white limbo between dimensions a large black portal opened before Kiyomi and she confidently strode through as it closed behind her, and she was dropped out into Makyo. Kiyomi landed in a graceful crouch and the gravelly road gave a crunch under her slight weight. Hearing the sounds of lumbering footsteps, she quickly dashed into the nearby forest. Kiyomi, look out! Startled by the boy now inside her head, she stumbled and tripped on a raised tree root. Her sudden fall saved her from a large clawed hand from taking her head off. Bracing herself from her fall, she rolled into a crouch and saw many trees ahead of her broken nor huge trenches dug into them. Above, Kiyomi jumped to the side as a bear-sized demon crashed into where she just stood. Getting a good look at the hulking form, it had black skin that gave off no shine, large clawed hands hung off the tree trunks called arms, a large barrel chest reminiscent of a gorilla's, and large legs tipped with 3 toes tensed for a jump. But the human-like head is what drew the most attention. It had no eyes, only large gills on its neck and razor teeth that stuck out over both lips, clearly meant for tearing of flesh and not chewing grass. The overall form had no fat, only rippling muscle beneath the coal-colored skin. The head of the beast swung to her direction and braced itself for takeoff. The demon's powerful legs kicked off, leaving potholes where the force of the jump became too great, and it shot at Kiyomi with claws outstretched and sickly green slime poured from its mouth and trailed behind it. With impressive limbo contest movement, Kiyomi leaned back when the beast flew over her, but the aggressive demon proved just as limber. Large clawed hands reached out and ripped into tree bark and swung around the trunk and came flying back at her. Rolling to the side, she quickly observed this demon was very acrobatic, as it would swing and leap from overhanging branches and make quick passes to try and kill her, increasing its speed by using centrifugal force and redirecting its trajectory, hoping to surprise the young demoness by the changes in direction and speed. Throughout the fight, Naruto was anything but idle during this battle. He was quickly watching the pattern the black demon had set up. It seemed some of the knowledge being fused with the mind of Kiyomi had passed off some of her centuries of intelligence onto the young blonde. This acrobatic demon liked to move in a clockwise pattern around Kiyomi and always struck with the same style. The right hand would always be the attacking hand, while the left was used for grappling the branches and tree trunks. The pattern and style now analyzed, Naruto decided to assist Kiyomi. Kiyomi, grab that branch from the ground and hold it just above your head in a stabbing position, and wait for my signal to thrust it down. Kiyomi acknowledged Naruto with a mental nod and snatched the branch while dodging another clawed swipe. Naruto's mind was going a mile a minute. Face the nearest tree to your left and keep the branch ready. Just as Kiyomi had faced the tree, the onyx demon blasted off another tree and came with its claw ready. Stab now. Kiyomi thrust the branch straight down and through the head of the passing demon. The new force on the flying demon sent it to the ground and dug a large trench into the dirt. Falling still, the demon writhed and twitched as its nerves fired. Kiyomi, seeing it down, quickly jumped onto its back and took hold of the jaw and back of the head. A quick tug and pull, the neck snapped with a gunshot sound. The demon body finally stilled. Now for the blood. Rolling the demon over, Kiyomi flashed her sharpened fangs and tore into the throat with abandon. She swallowed it all, blood, cartilage and flesh she greedily ate without care. The grass and dirt around the demon was quickly flecked with blood and gore. She gave in to her wild side, and it was shown as once she had consumed most of the blood pouring from the open throat, she quickly ripped the chest cavity open. With a few quick snaps of the rib cage, she had her go at the heart and surrounding arteries and veins. Blood coated her entire body. Her face was a solid mask of crimson red, her clawed fingers returned to perfectly manicured nails, her hair now sticky with the cooling blood. She relished in the feeling of the victory once again, rejuvenated from the power of the old god flowing through her. Kiyomi sat back with a content sigh. Her moment of bliss was interrupted by the voice in her head. Kiyomi, we have the new power, what do we do? Shaking off the hide that she got from the power, the demoness answered, you must take hold of the new power inside of me and will it to form your body on the outside. So Naruto inside her mental mindscape looked for this new power. Inside the mindscape, if I was power, where would I hide? Naruto queried as he walked through the endless grassy plains lit by the full moon that represented Kiyomi's mind. Walking for what seemed hours through the small rolling hills. Nothing but knee-high grass swaying gently with the breeze. Falling to his back, Naruto gazed at the beautiful moon constructed in the sky and the new twinkling stars surrounding it. Wait, stars? There weren't any stars before. With this new knowledge, the blonde reached his hand towards the sky and the stars moved and reacted to his beckoning. Half of the moving stars collected into his palm and the others rearranged themselves around the moon. The stars sunk into his palm and he felt the rush that accompanied them. Like a drug, he was hooked on that feeling. Closing his palm, he thought of his own body, a new one to house his now demonic soul. Outside the mindscape, sensing the split of her power, Kiyomi moved into a larger clearing. and soon she saw the twinkling wisps exit from everywhere on her body and coalesced into a solid form in front of her. As the final floating wisps settled onto the humanoid form on the ground, it flashed bright like the sun, forcing her eyes to close. Opening them, she laid her sensitive eyes upon a magnificent godly form. Clad in only some loose brown pants, the new body of Naruto was amazing. Powerful ripped arms flowed into an equally ripped chest and abs, his once short spiky peak physical condition. Wrapped around his arms and chest were intricate red-blue tattoos that came and curled into sharp points on his pectorals too. Blonde hair now reached his shoulder, with some of it in a ponytail off the back of his head almost on his face when he was human had baby fat, but his new form had only the sharp facial features only on a man, and Kiyomi watched with rapt attention as Naruto blinked his eyes, and where sky blue iris once hid now only in twin pools of red with orbs of black inside that quickly contracted to form a sharp elliptic shapes in each eye. Lifting himself into an upright position, Naruto flexed and stretched his new muscles out, testing their flexibility and strength. Satisfied that everything was in order, he laid his eyes upon his blood-covered partner. Maybe it was his new demonic side speaking, but she looked pretty damn sexy, layered all that crimson liquid. Shaking himself of his thoughts of how he would take Kiyomi, he looked over to the mangled form left of the coal-colored demon, feeling slightly unnerved by the damage the innocent-looking blood-covered girl wrought upon it. "Hey Kiyomi, don't you think those sensory gills on its neck would be useful, being able to sense everything around us?" Naruto questioned as he thought back to the effectiveness in battle they had displayed. "They could prove to be an advantage, but we do not gain their abilities from drinking their blood, only strength given from the god," was Kiyomi's calculative response as she lost interest in the direction of the conversation and she tried to sense nearby water to rinse off the blood. However, Naruto continued to stare at the corpse, then he looked at his hand, then back at the corpse and back to his hand. With a shrug he placed it upon a section of skin that wasn't drenched in blood. Concentrating on drawing in the residue demonic chakra, feeling the familiar sensation following the absorption, his mind was filled with the memories of the demon leaping from trees and drinking the blood of its slain foes. Naruto's mind assimilated everything, the muscle memory used in the acrobatic style of combat used by this feral demon. His body changed with the drawn-in powers. His once white skin grew darker, his nails lengthened and sharpened, the set of 3 gills on each side of the neck, even his muscles bulged a little to copy the creature. Finished with the absorption, Naruto released the corpse and sat on the blood-flecked grass. Naruto sitting in a meditative position was the sight. Kiyomi walked back from her bath to and saw the darkened form. She watched with interest as the minutes passed. His skin lightened and nail retracted into his body, and his muscles lost their doubled mass till they were back to normal. Only the set of gills on his neck remained. Opening his eyes, Naruto stood and tentatively flared his gills and felt the area around him. Like sonar vision, the world outside of his eyesight popped into his head like a blurred picture without color. Slightly disorientated from the sudden awareness of his surroundings, he held his head, trying to control the gills to only be used when he wants them to. Getting it under control, he looked to Kiyomi and put on a cocky smile. "They are pretty useful, Kiyomi. You sure you don't want them?" Kiyomi's mouth hung open. This man simply rewrote what she knew about the boundaries of demons. With an action that was out of character, she grabbed Naruto's arms and proceeded to shake him and demanded him to teach her this ability. The blonde laughed as he was shaken by the goddess among demons. All right, I'll teach you." Kiyomi spent the rest of the day practicing the absorption technique on Leaf so she could get a feel for it, and during their practice Naruto found he could subtly nudge Kiyomi's mind to perform the ability correctly, so she got a feel for what was supposed to happen. At the end, long in Makyo, they found a hollowed trunk to sleep under. They would need all the energy to continue to seek out more demons. One day Konoha bum at Naruto's feet. The sun rose high into the orange morning sky, casting long shadows into the forested area of Makyo. The sun rays finally reaching the hollowed tree Naruto and Kiyomi were staying in. They wrestled Kiyomi from her best sleep yet. She opened her eyes with an angry scowl and found herself wrapped in the now muscular-toned arms of Naruto. Beating down a blush, she slipped from his naked upper body. Feeling a lot less warm and complete, she shook off the feeling and stood outside stretching, groaning at the pops and cracks that her back gave off. Kiyomi took a deep breath and reveled in the fresh air she had missed since she left for the human realm. Sitting herself down at the base of a tree, she began her training to control her dense demonic chakra enough to absorb things such as Naruto has done. Naruto shivered in his sleep when Kiyomi untangled their bodies. On the edge between awake and asleep, he tossed in his sleep to find the warmth and wholeness he once had, but unfortunately he would go without. Snarling at the pain the sunlight caused by stabbing at his retina, Naruto opened his twin crimson pools, his pupils fluctuating until settled upon bean slits. With an exaggerated yawn showing off his large sharp canine teeth, Naruto stretched and flexed his muscles. Letting his gills appear and flare themselves, Naruto gained a quick summary of the area and saw Kiyomi sitting under a tree, turning the many green leaves and objects around her brown. Making quick strides, he took a seat next to Kiyomi. Naruto watched Kiyomi concentrate on the small piece of vegetation between her delicate fingers. Slowly but surely he could see the fresh green color drain away like wet paint washing off a wall. Without even thinking, the blonde put his hands over hers and lets his own energy flow with hers. Where their hands met, the deep ocean blue of Naruto's chakra began to mix with the raging red of Kiyomi's. Like a magical dance inspired by the wind, the chakra danced and swirled, intermingling and forming a whole new royal purple color. Like a thick liquid, the chakra dripped from their hands, and where each drop fell, the grass would flourish and grow. Suddenly, coming from the euphoric feeling she got from their chakra intermingling and flowing between them, she pulled her hands to her chest and pushed herself up from the spot next to Naruto. With the sudden movement, suddenly her entire world changed form. All that she saw was now overlapped by a static picture, and everything around her being the same. The sudden disorientation caused her to buckle and fall to the ground, coughing and retching, the sensation of extreme vertigo overwhelming her. Seeing his partner suddenly collapse, Naruto moved next to her. "Kiyomi, are you alright? Speak to me." He saw that her once perfect ivory-colored neck now had a set of gills, and those gills were flaring erratically. Placing a hand over each side, he forced his chakra into her and with a practiced method willed the gills to relax and recede. Slowly Kiyomi gained her equilibrium and steadied her vision, moving from the tiny puddle of violent saliva she threw up. Naruto grabbed hold of her and picked Kiyomi up bridal style and set her next to the tree. Kiyomi lay there and looked into the worried eyes of Naruto. "It seems when we mixed chakra I received your absorb gill ability." A deep sigh escaped Naruto and a small smile graced his lips. "I guess so. How are you feeling?" "I am feeling fine, do not be so concerned, I have experienced worse," Kiyomi responded with a haughty tone. The smile left the blonde's face, hearing her disregard him like he was stupid. "Apparently I can control the transformations with some well-applied chakra. Now you just need to learn how to control the changes." Kiyomi ran her fingers through the lengths of fire-red hair hanging over her shoulder. Seeing the beautiful smile leave Naruto's face upset her, and she couldn't figure it out why she was upset. She was once a bloodthirsty, all-powerful demon. Emotions shouldn't affect her, she is above it. 3 years later, and what a long 3 years it was. There wasn't a day yet Naruto returned to normal from his second day in Makyo. He was never the same. Maybe it was the demonic whisperings of his mind, or he simply did anything he wanted because he could. Kiyomi could still hear the screams of children and parents alike as Naruto tore apart and raised the first home. Flashback: zipping through the trees with the grace and agility of a monkey, Naruto swung from tree to tree, pushing off branches, causing only the sound of rustling leaves from the powerful leg muscles shaking the trees. He quickly came upon the small log hut, and large man and 3 small children ran around laughing and yelling. Seeing the built man with horns that came from the top of his head and swooped back towards it, neck, shaggy black hair covered the base of the horns and piercing black eyes scanned the tree line, showing he sensed Naruto's approach. Quickly ushering the 3 small demons inside the hut, he called, "Show yourself, how did you find this place?" Swiftly dropping onto the grass, Naruto walked from the shade, some blood still wet in the corners of his mouth. He gave a cruel-fanged smile and inhaled deeply, looking past the man and at the home. "Your family will help me in my path of revenge. Whether you resist or not, I will take from you everything," he said as he took slow calculated step towards the horned man. "What are you talking about? Leave now, you have no business here," the raven-haired man said as he took a guarded stance. Naruto quickly saw the man shift and began to laugh. "You wish to know how I found this place, correct? Well, I suppose I can show you." Closing his slitted red eyes, his shape slowly changed, His hair turned pale green and his muscles slimmed out and his height shortened until he looked identical to the woman he tore apart and consumed just minutes ago. "Please Isuko, don't resist." Naruto called out the man's name he gleaned from his victim's memories. "Nanami, what is going on?" Naruto slowly walked to the man still in the form of the now named Nanami and reached his arms out like he wanted a hug, and the man, clearly confused, accepted the hug. During the embrace, Naruto's form returned to normal and the demon man felt the change, looking down and seeing Nanami no longer there but the man from before. Asuko didn't even know what had hit him before a clawed hand was through his stomach wall and clenched around his innards tightly. Ripping his hand from the surprised demon, Naruto quickly tackled him and began his gorging of blood and flesh once again, just as ravenous and messy. Asuko let out a barely audible exhale of air as his life-giving liquid was pumped from his body by a frantic heartbeat. With pieces of flesh and blood scattered in every direction was the scene the three children saw as they peeked out from the crack in the door. The oldest of the three grabbed both their mouths shut before they could scream and dragged them away from the door, holding them as they tried to scream through the hands, hurrying to the exit furthest away from the gore. They barely stepped out and Naruto was already in front of them, grinning madly. The three children quickly dashed away from the crazed blonde murderer, screaming the whole way, and quickly each screaming child was brought down and killed with minimal blood loss, snapping of the neck or a punch with enough force to cause cerebral hemorrhaging. Naruto seemed to have learned from his previous two kills and sought to preserve all the power-giving liquid without giving it to the soil. After finishing his meal, he used demonic chakra to set the entire house and bodies ablaze. The raging red fire flickered and reflected off his blood-red iris, his white teeth shining against the flames. Naruto never forgot to absorb every bit of knowledge and physical trait afforded to him by his victims. You never know when someone will know a secret. End flashback. The red-haired demoness still shuddered to think about how Naruto came back from his hunt. She shouldn't be affected by the way Naruto acted. She was once the same, but it got to her more than she would be willing to admit. She was terrified of Naruto and at the same time terrified for him. One night Naruto returned to her with a wild, lustful look in his twin blood pools. Flashback. Entering the makeshift hut, Naruto growled deep within his chest as he looked at the lithe form of Kiyomi kneeling next to a fire, turning the coals and stoking the small flame. Quickly grabbing her by the waist, he pulled her flush to his muscled body and let the vibrations from his growling entice her. Kiyomi's eyes widened as she could practically taste the raw lust wafting off Naruto. Pushing away from his body, Kiyomi freed herself and stood across from the lust-filled demon. Naruto, stop, leave and take a swim in the river. A sly smile played on his lips. You don't see how this is going to work, do you? Naruto stalked around Kiyomi. I'm not asking to do this, as the strongest I am forcing you. Kiyomi made a break for the exit to let Naruto cool off. Unfortunately, with him being stronger, he was also faster. Cutting off her path to freedom, he grabbed her arm forcefully and threw her to the ground. Making short work of the deep blue kimono and matching bra and panties, he began to knead her breasts and said, "You will serve me whenever I ask." The tears flowed from her crimson eyes. Kiyomi was a virgin since never wanting it when she was feral. It seemed Naruto would take her here and now. She couldn't escape, so she begged Naruto, "Don't do this, please stop." Suddenly everything was quiet except the sobbing from Kiyomi. Opening her bloodshot eyes, she saw the unfocused and devoid of life Naruto. Inside Naruto's head thousands of memories played, spanning his entire 18 years of life both as human and demon. All the faces of those he once loved and the face of all those he had slaughtered in his quest for revenge, and it all stopped at one particular scene. A younger Naruto sitting in the chair listening as his entire world was torn down and burned around him. He screamed, "I haven't done anything." Coming back to the real world, Naruto's once slitted eyes dilated back into circular pupils. His eyes darted around, taking into full view what he was attempting to commit. Quickly rolling to his heels, he sprung up and towards the door. His eyes spoke everything his mouth didn't say: confusion, regret, and most of all fear. End flashback. Ever since the night Kiyomi would only Naruto passing seemed to stay away from her, she never had another incident like that again. Each and every morning Kiyomi would feel different, slightly more powerful, and knew things she didn't know before. Only after staying alert all night did she find out why. In the dark just before dawn she would find Naruto looking haggard and disheveled enter the small hut she made, and he would sit next to her and his unfocused gaze would stare at her. After what seemed hours he would gently grab her hat and begin pushing his chakra through her, regulating his power into her, while the knowledge he gained from his daily hunting, physical traits and beneficial anomalies he would transfer. One of the major changes she found was she could manipulate many animals, insects and even a fellow demon she came across. Coming along with the mental manipulation, she could now feel Naruto's surface emotions and the gist of his thoughts, most of them involving his revenge, but she would sense some deeper thoughts on becoming a god and having absolute power. Strange enough, she would try to wake up just before he came. She loved the feeling of warmth and wholeness she got from Naruto's ocean blue chakra flowing into her. Kiyomi never told Naruto that she knew of his nightly visits, fearing he would stop. Back with Naruto and Kiyomi finally after 3 long years, Naruto's aggressive approach to gathering power had paid off. Today was the day the final requirements were met for a successful hold to be Tom between realms. Kiyomi could feel Naruto's eagerness to cross over, his unrestrained power flowing off him in waves like a heartbeat. It only got stronger and faster when she began the ritual. To open a portal, the elements of each hole and space must be balanced, fire to fire, water to water, and so on. Opening a portal was actually very simple if a demon on each side could provide the elements, but to do it alone is why it required more power than most demons could gain. To manifest the elements needed in a different realm took more than Kiyomi had alone, but with Naruto next to her ready to give his chakra it would go off without a hitch. Slowly but surely you could see the tear in space form. Beginning with just a distortion in the air like looking through water, it began to grow and soon you could see a rainforest with a miasma of fog settling along the ground. It was a sight to behold from the human world. The air itself seemed to tear apart to show a window into Makyo. Naruto stepped through the tear in space with Kiyomi not far behind as the portal stitched itself back together. Naruto took a deep inhale of the thick humid air, quickly ascertaining where this climate would be. They were in the land of water. A large feral smile crossed Naruto's lips. "I am back, Konoha, your time is near an end," he shouted to the sky. Naruto stepped through the air in space with Kiyomi not far behind as the portal stitched itself back together. Naruto took a deep inhale of the thick humid air, quickly ascertaining where this climate would be. They were in the land of water. A large feral smile crossed Naruto's lips. "I am back, Konoha, your time is near an end," he shouted to the sky. It seemed the elements themselves responded to his declaration as the wind picked up and dark rain clouds rolled in with lightning flashing through the sky. The concussive thunderclaps felt on the ground. Kiyomi shielded her eyes from the hard rainfall and whipping winds. From her limited vision and hearing she could see and hear Naruto's loud laughter in between the thunder. Soon enough Naruto got himself under control and called out, "Kiyomi, let's move. I wish to see all that has changed since I was last alive. Maybe pick up a few new skills for us to utilize me." With those words large leathery black wings erupted from his back in a haze of darkness. After wrapping his arms around Kiyomi's waist he gave powerful flap of his wings and took to the sky with his demoness partner clutching to him tightly. As they sailed high above the ground Kiyomi couldn't help but snuggle slightly into the chest of her partner. Don't get it wrong, she was still afraid he might one day turn his sights on her like he had done a few years back, but the feeling she got from being close to him was worth the danger. Naruto felt his partner shift in his python-like grip, Kiyomi's head resting just below his chin, her scent filling his nose. His pupils began to contract and sharpen into thinner slits. Thinking quickly before he lost his remaining common sense, he shifted his entire body from the human shape to that of a large bat-like creature. His feet elongated and claws formed on his long toes, his long blonde hair shortened and created a mane reaching down his back, and his fangs shifting into sharp points. With his transformation complete he dropped his passenger from his strong arms and gently caught her with his powerful talons, careful to not scratch her perfect ivory skin. Flying swiftly into the night sky, Naruto's demon-powered hearing could pick up the sounds of fighting and clashing weapons. Taking a hard left turn he swooped down into a marsh. Watching the many ninja leap around and release jutsu all over, Naruto thought it was amusing to watch these ants fight amongst themselves. Seeing the chance to pick up the knowledge of recent happenings he lifted Kiyomi from his talons and flipped her onto his back. "Geez Naruto, learn to be a little more gentle with the lady," Kiyomi said as her equilibrium was thrown off by being flipped around. And I will when I find one. It seemed even after 3 years he was still a smartass. Hearing Naruto be sarcastic, it was rare and shown he still wasn't all changed. There is still hope for you, Naruto, Kiyomi thought as she hugged him from her piggyback position. Spotting a down ninja in the mist and gear, Naruto angled downwards for a quick snatch up. It must have been a surprise to all who witnessed it. The Anbu stood holding his side until a large leathery form crashed into him. Quickly latching onto the ninja's shoulders, Naruto gave a few powerful flaps of his mighty wings and took off into the sky. While the ninja struggled in his tightening grip, Naruto took a firm hold of his head and began to absorb everything he knew, from his secret bondage fetish to the high-level rebel prisoner locked beneath the Mizukage Tower and everything in between, including the Baiju sealed within the Mizukage himself. Naruto cut hard and aimed for the battleground. Seeing as he had gathered what he wanted, flew near the earth and plunged the ninja headfirst into the dirt, quickly shredding the skin and cartilage from the one side of his face, and many cracks were heard in succession as each vertebrae were smashed into each other, compacting the spine from being 18 inches to being 10. A large bloody trench was left in Naruto's wake. The gruesome scene startled each of the combating ninjas, and the fight quickly turned into a retreat on both sides. Deciding to share his newfound knowledge, he let his deep ocean blue chakra seep from his body and into Kiyomi. From the ground it looked like a blue shooting star racing across the dark sky. Quickly assimilating the knowledge of all jutsu, chakra regulation exercises, and information, Kiyomi quickly supplied her thoughts on what she felt Naruto was already thinking. The three-tailed turtle will be weakened inside of a Jinchuriki, Kiyomi said. Excellent, then it will be our next stepping stone to Konoha. Naruto responded, flapping his wings quicker to gain altitude. He coasted along the air currents towards his destination, Kirigakure. Deep beneath the Mizukage Tower, Mei Terumi sat shackled to the chakra-sapping wall. Her once pristine-styled auburn hair now lay lifeless around her due to lack of bathing and combing. Mei's light green eyes seemed dull in the low-lit cell. Thinking of how she got here further depressed her. Flashback 2 months. This was it. The final siege on Kirigakure would determine the victor in this blood-stained rebellion, the forces of the Mizukage versus the rebel factions. Each sought dominance in the same territory, but only one could remain. Yagura, stop this, your forces dwindle and only Kirigakure remains for bastion of safety. Mei spoke. She wanted to spare everyone from this battle. I am sorry, Mei Terumi, but I will not lose this war. Once your rebellion has been quelled, Kiri will be ushered into a new era. Shigiri no Sato will become a power to be feared. So be it, Yagura. Today I will destroy your corrupt government and end our village's bloody ways. With those words each opposing sides clashed. Water jutsu flew overhead, washing away many ninja. The dirt became mud from the water and blood soaking the ground. Screams of agony were abundant across the battlefield as limbs were removed by sharp weapons and dislocated or torn off from the high-pressured water being spewed. But the fight between titans was only just beginning. Separated from the rest of the common ninja stood one shinobi and one kunoichi. Their eyes spoke of determination and the will to achieve victory through any means. Standing 20 yards apart, their gazes bore into each other, waiting for the first attack. Then it happened like a clash of thunder. They clashed, holding their opponent's fist. Mei grabbed the forearm of Yagura and went for a shoulder toss. Yagura was unfazed. While upside down in the air, he began to make signs for Jutsu Suitan. Oshitama. The powerful stream of water tore up the ground, leaving deep gouges in the land. Jumping to the left, Mei avoided the water jutsu and began her own yotan. Rukinami, making a sweeping motion with her hands, the earth quickly became molten lava. As the lava moved, it gained speed and height, picking up more molten ground. The Mizukage watched on with an uninterested gaze as the wave of burning death raged towards him. Holding out his hands, the green chakra of Sanbi burst into life around him. As the lava touched his outstretched hands, he made the motion of opening curtains and the lava split and quickly fell on either side of him. Yagura walked towards the stunned Mei until he saw her face of fear turn into confidence. Quirking an eyebrow, he followed her gaze to his arm. Flipping it over, he saw the intricate design of a seal written on paper stuck to his pale skin. Eyes widening upon the realization of what that sealed as he went for the corner of it to rip it off, but with the ram sign from Mei it dissolved into his skin. His body felt searing hot pain as his Baiju's power were forced back through his chakra gates and into his seal. Yagura's lapse in concentration was all Mei needed to take the upper hand. Dashing to him, she planted a firm punch to his solar plexus, forcing his breath out and his body off the ground. She followed her strike with a downward elbow to the back of his head. Yagura's mind was swimming in the pain his chakra coils burned from the seal's doing, and he was pretty sure his skull was cracked from either the powerful elbow to his head or the force of hitting the ground face first. Rolling to the side, he dodged the heel drop from his opponent, which dented then ground under the force. Holding his hairline fractured ribs, Yagura felt true fear for the first time in a long time. It seemed his Baiju that once was an asset was now a weakness against this opponent. Mei never gave him the chance to retaliate. She gave him a split kick to his jaw, sending him high into the air. With a powerful jump, she stopped his ascent with snap kick to his side, throwing him many yards away. Tumbling across the dirt, Yagura came to a stop facing the sky as the dark clouds of late night shower loomed overhead. Pushing himself into a kneeling position, he could feel each of his injuries throbbing painfully. His mask of indifference had long been cracked and the pain he felt was shown on his face. Mei stood 10 yards in front of the prone form of the Mizukage. Yagura, for the acts you have committed and guided, you will die on this battlefield. Pulling a kunai from her robes, she went for a quick slice of the jugular or carotid artery, but her hand was caught by her second-in-command Ao. With the kunai stopped, Ao thrust his index and middle finger into the pharynx of Mei, closing off the air supply and ability to talk. Mei's confusion turned to fear as she could feel her body quickly trying to get her much-needed air. Her chest heaved, trying to draw in breath. Her stomach muscles began to violently contract to help the diaphragm. All her body's efforts were in vain as he vision darkened and the cold grip of unconsciousness tightened its hold. She could hear Alcei attacking the Mizukage's treason. Flashback. And so, with herself captured and the rebel forces scattered and unorganized, it seemed Yagura defeated her years of effort through the person she thought she could trust most. Quietly sobbing at her failure, she failed to notice the tall blonde man and fire-haired woman seeming to walk through the walls. Crunch. Mei pulled her tear-stained hands from her face and saw a shirtless man ripping the chains from the solid chakra-reinforced concrete walls. Her shock was compounded on when he knelt down and tore the cuffs around her petite wrists like they were tissue paper. The tall blonde stared right into Mei's twin green pools. "Are you Mei Terumi, high security prisoner number 0334? Mei's voice was soft and strained from 2 months of silence and poor hydration. "Yeah, I'm Mei. Who are you?" Naruto stood up. "Who I am is unimportant." The yellow-haired man continued to stare into her eyes. "What is important is what you know of the Sanbi." Even after her solitary confinement, she still held the mental acuity to gain something. "What will I get from telling you what I know?" While she spoke, Naruto briefly pondered on why he didn't just drain her knowledge and leave without all this talking. His eyes sharpened at her ploy of extortion. "I do not have to make deals with your kind. You will tell me, or I will forcefully take what I want and leave you to rot in this cell until death." The blonde voice was almost a shout and held the sound of cold hard truth to back his claim. Mei's softened eyes flickered over to her apparent rescuer's companion with long red hair, woman clothed in a deep blue kimono, who seemed uneasy and shifted her weight from one leg to the other and twirled her hair between her fingers. When Mei focused on Naruto again, she saw his boring gaze waiting for an answer. Mei could tell when not to tempt this man. She quickly spilled what she knew. "Yagura is the Jinchuriki of the Sanbi. He uses its power almost exclusively to strike fear into his opponents and sow chaos among his enemies. I had studied his combat style and abilities extensively so that one day I could face him in battle and take the title of Mizukage from him." Mei continued on with more details of his preferred tai and ninjutsu. Naruto remembered everything he ever heard or saw. His intelligence and comprehensive powers were far past what most would see as genius. When Mei finished her lecture on Yagura's powers, he turned to his partner and they walked back through the wall like it wasn't even there. Mei saw them leave and felt disappointed. She thought that if he had left her alive, he should have taken her or killed her for fear of her telling Yagura of him. The Yotan princess sat against the wall. Escape was not an option. Her chakra was low from constantly being drained and the amount of ninja she would face. She would die before she saw daylight. Not a moment after her resignation to waiting for death, a petite pale hand reached from the wall behind her, took a hold of her shoulder and dragged her back through the solid rock. When the guards checked on her cell they would find no trace of her, not a hair, scent or chakra trail. She simply vanished into the rock wall. Back in Konoha over the last 3 years Rayna was in poor shape, her once vibrant red hair was listless and fell around her head. She had gotten a lot less than the recommenced hours of sleep over the past 3 years. Her dreams were haunted by the gutted form of her supposed non-existent elder brother. Her nightmares would always bring her back to the village market square where the demon's execution occurred. The world would be frozen, only herself and Kyuubi would be mobile. Her father would be frozen mid-stomp and her brother would stand with blood still dripping from his neck wound and just stare into her eyes like he was searching her very soul. No words were spoken no matter how desperately she wished to speak and yell at him. Her dreams would feel like hours. They were silent and almost perfectly still, just Naruto focused on her. Minato and Kushina had seen the change in their daughter after the death of Kyuubi and thought maybe she was having nightmares of it coming back, so they sought the help of Nochi Yamanaka to diagnose her and hopefully help her get some sleep. All the therapy and mindjutsu did nothing to discover her problem. She never told them her nightmares were of the execution day of Kyuubi. He was the forbidden topic for her parents. Although recently her dreams had begun to worsen, instead of the world frozen Kyuubi would begin to fight back against her father's stomps or the execution itself, and each time she dreamed of his resistance he would be stronger and fight harder until finally the demon broke free. Kyuubi began to slaughter everyone until only they remained. His blood-covered hands reached out to touch her cheek so close she could feel the warmth of the blood on his hands. "Ray, wake up, you're going to be late for training. You know your father doesn't like to be kept waiting." Kushina yelled from the hallway, successfully ending her nightmare. Groaning in approval at the abrupt end to the worst dream she has had in 3 years, Ray dressed in her standard uniform she received from her mother. "All right, Mom," she shouted back. With her outfit properly fitted and tightened to prevent any malfunctions, she looked over herself in the mirror and briefly saw her deceased brother with the grim look of determination he had on the day of his execution. She had never seen him once in her life before that day in the council room. Minato talked incessantly about the Kyuubi biding time in Konoha and about how once the deity-powered Fuinjutsu fully melded her brother and the demon together forever they could return to their rightful home and live happily. Shaking away the memories of her family's sacrifice, she left her modest room, down the stairs and settled herself into a chair at the dining room table for breakfast. Glancing at the clock, she shoveled the rest of breakfast into her open mouth and sprinted out the door and quickly sped down the road to the training grounds, dodging people left and right. Today was the day her father would begin to teach her his famous Hieratian, but first she must go over all she was taught, her nin, tai, gen, and Fuinjutsu. Ray was trained as all aspects of the kunoichi to perfection. She was a representative of the Hokage by blood. She would excel above all others. She was a Namikaze. With Naruto many miles from Kirigakure slowly rising from the ground, Kiyomi and Naruto stood tall while Mei collapsed to the ground, taking large gulps of air. What the gasp hell was that? Mei yelled as best she could. Kiyomi, looking at her fellow female, gave a soft laugh. That my little jailbird was Tsuchiryaku. Earth travel, it is the greatest way to move around undetected. Naruto paid no attention to his companions, closed his eyes and took a couple deep breaths, his gills once again flaring into life. His world was painted around him, seeing everything around him from small insects to large mammals foraging around the humid forest. Sensing no one within his large awareness, his gills sealed up and once again were soft pale skin. Tuning his gaze to the two beauties before him, Naruto felt the primal urges rising to take them both like he had tried to Kiyomi years back. Pushing those instincts from his mind, he could still see the fear etched into the crimson eyes of Kiyomi. A deep sense of regret filled his emotions before he thought back to his execution, his murder by his own father. If only the rage he felt could kill, then he would walk right to Konoha. But Naruto must bide his time and take away everything from Konoha before dealing the final deadly blow. With the strong emotions Kiyomi could read from Naruto, she felt his lust, the regret, but they both dimmed to make way for the deep hatred that bubbled up to the surface. Such a powerful emotion quickly crippled Kiyomi's sensory ability. Her mind began shutting down every other sense to compensate for the overload. Losing her equilibrium to the experience, she stumbled and latched onto the nearest object to stabilize her, which happened to be the sturdy arms of Naruto. Catching her quickly once he felt the sudden weight, holding her gently once more his eyes hardened and his more animalistic features began to form. Again catching himself before he did something unwanted, he set the demoness on her feet and covered his nose in an attempt to stop the lust-inducing aroma wafting off his partner. Watching the scene with a critical eye, Mei saw how her savior seemed to react to the other female, seeing this as a good time to interject, "So what are your names?" Kiyomi, partially distracted by the feelings and clips of thought she picked up from Naruto, answered, "I am Kiyomi, and the muscled man is Naruto Uzu," was all she got out before the aforementioned man interrupted. "It is just Naruto." Watching the setting sun, it calmed the burning embers Naruto felt simmering inside of him. "Come, let's find a place to stay the night. We will make plans to kill Yagura tomorrow." Those words resonated deep within Mei, her humiliating defeat by her own subordinate. Now Mei sought to simply destroy both Mizukage and Ao. The blonde flooded Yukai around his being, triggering a transformation. His powerful bone wings sprouted from his back, accompanied with a large barbed tail growing from the base of his spine, which by the looks of the tip meant only death to those struck. His bare feet lengthened and toes formed into large 3 talons facing forward. Naruto's red iris expanded till his sclera was bathed in red as well. His hair formed into a shaggy lion's mane of sorts. Letting loose a shock-inducing roar, Naruto's transformation was complete. "I haven't been in this form in months." Gesturing to his now open arms, he intended for those two to find a suitable place to hold on to. Mei's mouth was wide open at this impossible feat before her. Kiyomi was unfazed by the chimera form he took. She quickly wrapped Naruto's left arm around her and called to the still stunned Mei, "You should grab on or we're leaving you behind." That seemed to shake her from her stupor, and Mei latched on to his right side. Leaning forward, Naruto flexed his wings upwards till just the tips touched, and then with a powerful downbeat of his wings they lifted up into the air, quickly ascending past the tree line and further into the orange-dyed sky. Mei screaming the whole way, "We'll stop it, you won't fall," came the transformed man's voice. Closing her light green eyes, Mei took a couple steadying breaths, and when she reopened her emerald pools it was like being in heaven. The soft white clouds gave off a tangerine color from the setting sun, and the cool upper atmospheric air rushed past her face and uncovered legs. The thick rolling clouds once seemed far above an inch's touch were now only a hair's breadth away. Reaching out her delicate hands into a passing nimbus, the condensation collected on her palms. Mei felt at peace, and nothing mattered anymore, not the fate of Kiri, or Yagura, not even the muscular god amongst men holding her waist tightly. Quickly hiding her blushing red face, she turned to look at more clouds. Alas, this feeling came to an end, and Naruto closed his wings for a aerial dive to the gigantic inactive volcano that created this massive island. Landing on a flat shelf, Naruto set his two companions down while he moved to the rock face. A few moments before Naruto created the cave, Mei had another question. "Kiyomi back in the prison, what did he mean by my kind?" Kiyomi suppressed a yawn and stretched. "It's exactly what you think. We aren't human. Then what are you?" Naruto put his part to the answer without looking from the rock. "We are demons." Placing his strong hands upon it, he forced Yukai into the shape he desired, and before their eyes it opened up into a small but cozy cave. Kiyomi rushed past Naruto and quickly transformed her clothes into thinner nightwear and found a raised section to the cave and stretched out before quickly succumbing to sleep. Mei moved at a much more sedated pace. She noticed Naruto never entered the cave and instead slept outside. Shrugging to herself, she was too interested at the moment. Finding another flat space above the floor, she laid down and stretched for the first time since she was imprisoned. Comfortably positioned, her eyes fluttered until she too fell into blissful sleep.